I was living my peaceful life in Seattle, far away from my hometown, when an unexpected email notification from my estranged sister Amanda appeared after 7 years of silence. The memories of my family turning their backs on me when I was falsely accused came flooding back. A sexual assault allegation that was completely fabricated destroyed everything I had built. Despite their abandonment, I managed to rebuild my life from scratch, finding strength I never knew I had. Now, as I stared at that email, conflicting emotions washed over me. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from. If you have ever been wrongfully accused or abandoned by loved ones, please hit subscribe to join our community of survivors. Growing up in suburban Ohio, my family was everything to me. My parents, my 2 sisters, Amanda and Elise, we were the picture-perfect family that everyone in the neighborhood admired. Every Sunday we gathered for family dinners, where my mother would cook her famous pot roast, while my father entertained us with stories from his work week. During holidays, our traditions were sacred, decorating the Christmas tree together while drinking hot chocolate, carving pumpkins on Halloween, and annual camping trips to Lake Erie every summer. As the only son, I was often referred to as the golden child. My parents beamed with pride whenever I achieved academic success or scored the winning point in my high school basketball games. I remember the standing ovation they gave me when I received a scholarship to Ohio State, and how they cried tears of joy when I decided to attend a local college instead so I could stay close to home. Family meant everything to me, and I never imagined a day would come when they would turn their backs on me. It was during my sophomore year at college that I met Jessica. I was cramming for finals at the campus coffee shop when she asked if she could share my table since the place was packed. With her bright smile and contagious laugh, she immediately captured my attention. We discovered we shared a passion for photography and soon found ourselves spending hours discussing composition techniques and our favorite photographers. What started as casual coffee meetups quickly blossomed into a whirlwind romance. When I introduced Jessica to my family, they welcomed her with open arms. My mother insisted she join our Sunday dinners. My father taught her how to fish during our camping trips, and my sisters treated her like one of their own. Jessica charmed them all with her intelligence and vivacity. After graduation, we decided to move in together despite subtle warnings from my college roommate that something about her seemed off. I was too enamored to notice the red flags. The first signs of trouble appeared gradually. Jessica would question me whenever I texted female classmates about group projects, accusing me of flirting. She began checking my phone when I was in the shower, claiming she was just looking for a photo we had taken together. Our arguments escalated quickly. She would throw accusations at me, then storm out only to return hours later, acting as if nothing had happened sometimes, even bearing gifts and apologies. My circle of friends began to shrink, as Jessica deemed them not good enough. According to her, my best friend Thomas was a bad influence. My study partner Alicia obviously had feelings for me, and my childhood friend Marcus was just using me for connections. One by one, I lost touch with people who had been integral parts of my life. Even my weekly visits to my parents decreased, as Jessica would make me feel guilty for choosing them over spending time with her. The real turning point came 3 years into our relationship. I had borrowed her laptop to finish a project when a message notification popped up. I would never normally snoop, but the preview contained my name. What I discovered shattered my world. Explicit messages between Jessica and her coworker David dating back months. The messages not only confirmed their physical affair, but also contained mocking comments about me and our relationship. When confronted, Jessica initially denied everything despite the evidence right in front of her. Then her tactics changed. She blamed me for being emotionally distant, for working too much, for not appreciating her enough. After hours of circular arguments, I made the decision to end our relationship. Her tears quickly dried up and were replaced by cold rage when she realized I would not change my mind. As she packed her belongings, she turned to me with a look that sent chills down my spine. "You will regret this, Wilbur. I will make sure you lose everything you care about." I dismissed her words as empty threats from a wounded ego. I had no idea that those words would become my new reality. 2 weeks after our breakup, I was startled by loud knocking on my apartment door. Two police officers stood outside asking if I was Wilbur Hayes. They requested I come to the station for questioning regarding serious allegations. My heart pounded as they explained that Jessica had filed a report claiming I had sexually assaulted her multiple times during our relationship. The allegations were detailed, calculated, and completely false. Jessica had crafted a narrative painting me as controlling and violent, claiming she had been too afraid to report it while we were together. As I sat in the interrogation room, I felt as though I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. The officers, one of whom knew Jessica's family, looked at me with disgust as I desperately professed my innocence. My parents posted bail, but the drive home was filled with uncomfortable silence. My father gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, while my mother stared out the window, occasionally wiping tears. When we arrived home, my sister Amanda was waiting, her face a mask of confusion. "Why would Jessica make something like this up?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was trying to make sense of what she already believed was true. My younger sister Elise was less subtle. "I always thought there was something off about your relationship," she said coldly. "Jessica was always so anxious around you. Now we know why." Her words cut through me like a knife. The sister who once looked up to me now viewed me as a monster. Within days, the abandonment spread beyond my family. Friends I had known since elementary school stopped returning my calls. My college roommate Thomas, who had initially warned me about Jessica, blocked me on social media. My workplace placed me on unpaid leave, pending the investigation with my manager, suggesting it might be better if I resigned to avoid unnecessary attention to the company. The local newspaper ran a small article about the case. Although they used the word alleged, seeing my name in print associated with such a heinous act made me physically ill. Social media became a battlefield I quickly retreated from after receiving threatening messages from strangers who knew nothing about me. Jessica had launched what appeared to be an orchestrated sympathy campaign, portraying herself as a brave survivor speaking out against abuse. My neighbors, who once greeted me warmly, now avoided eye contact or crossed the street when they saw me approaching. The elderly couple who had invited me for dinner every month suddenly had no idea who I was when I passed them in the hallway. The local YMCA, where I volunteered coaching youth basketball, asked me to step down for the time being, which we all knew meant forever. The final blow came during a tense family dinner where I attempted to explain my side of the story. My mother, who had always been my fiercest defender, looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "We did not raise you like this, Wilbur." My father, a man of few words, simply stated that there is no smoke without fire. The implication that he believed I was capable of such acts shattered what remained of my heart. The betrayal deepened when I discovered through social media that Jessica had been invited to my parents' home for support. A photo showed her sitting in our living room, my mother's arm around her shoulders, as if comforting her own daughter. When I confronted them about it, my father told me it would be best if I did not contact them for a while. "Until this is all sorted out," he said, as if my innocence was something to be determined rather than assumed. With my reputation in tatters and my support system crumbling, I threw all my energy and resources into clearing my name. I found an attorney who specialized in false accusations, draining my savings account to pay her retainer. She was the first person who actually listened to me, without judgment, who looked at the facts rather than the emotions swirling around the case. Through diligent investigation, we discovered Jessica had a pattern of similar behavior. 2 ex-boyfriends came forward with stories of threats she had made when they ended relationships. A former roommate revealed Jessica had talked about teaching me a lesson for breaking up with her. Most damning were text messages to her friend describing her plan to ruin that bastard's life after our breakup. As the legal bills mounted, I sold my car, took out loans, and picked up night shifts at a warehouse that did not care about my pending case. I was fighting not just for my legal freedom, but for my very identity. After 4 excruciating months, the district attorney dropped all charges against me due to insufficient evidence and the discovery of Jessica's contradictory statements. The text messages showing her vindictive intentions were particularly persuasive. But while I was legally cleared, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. Jessica faced no consequences for her false report. She simply moved to another city and started fresh, while I was left to deal with the wreckage of my life. My employer reluctantly offered my job back, but the awkward glances and whispered conversations whenever I entered a room made it unbearable. Despite the case being dismissed, people still referred to me as that guy who got away with it. I made one final attempt to reconnect with my family. I sent emails explaining how the charges were dropped, attached court documents proving my innocence, and even forwarded testimonials from people who had experienced Jessica's manipulation. The response was deafening silence. My mother eventually sent a text saying they needed more time. My father never responded at all. Amanda sent a brief, "Glad you are okay" message that felt like closing a door rather than opening one. Elise remained convinced of my guilt, telling mutual friends she would never feel safe around me again. With nothing left to keep me in Ohio, I made the decision to leave completely. Seattle was as far as I could get while still remaining in the continental United States. I arrived with 2 suitcases containing all I had left in the world, a depleted bank account, and a shattered sense of self. James, a former colleague who had been one of the few to stand by me, offered his couch while I got on my feet. Those first few weeks in Seattle were some of the darkest of my life. Despite my legal vindication, I felt like a criminal in hiding. I took an entry-level customer service position that barely covered basic expenses, despite having a business degree. Each time I met someone, new panic would rise in my chest, as I wondered if they would somehow discover my past. Therapy became my lifeline, though affording it meant cutting back on everything else. My therapist, Dr. Lillian, helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a form of PTSD. The abandonment by my family had created deep wounds that would take years to heal. She helped me see that their reaction said more about their own fears and insecurities than it did about my character. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. After 3 months on James's couch, I found a small studio apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The landlady, Mrs. Rodriguez, was a widow in her 60s, who somehow sensed I needed more than just a place to stay. She brought me homemade meals, asked about my day, and never pried when I was vague about my past. In her own way, she provided the maternal presence I so desperately missed. Photography, once a passion I had shared with Jessica, became a solitary healing practice. I joined a local camera club, forcing myself to interact with strangers who knew nothing of my history. Each time I shared my work and received positive feedback, a small piece of my self-worth was restored. At work, my education and skills could not stay hidden forever. Within a year, I was promoted to team lead, and 6 months after that to department manager. My new coworkers saw me for who I was not, for the accusations that had nearly destroyed me. They became the first building blocks of my new social circle. Through a support group for victims of false accusations, I met others who understood my experience in a way even the most empathetic outsider never could. We formed a tight bond, creating our own holidays and traditions when our biological families were no longer available to us. They became my chosen family, proving that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the darkest circumstances. 4 years into my new life in Seattle, I felt stable enough to consider dating again. The thought terrified me at first. The vulnerability, the risk, the possibility of being hurt or accused again. My therapist encouraged me to start small, just coffee dates with clear boundaries. It was during a charity photography exhibition that I met Sarah, an elementary school art teacher, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Our relationship progressed, slowly built on honest communication and mutual respect. For months, I avoided telling her about my past, afraid it would change how she saw me. When I finally gathered the courage to share my story, her reaction stunned me. Rather than doubt or suspicion, she showed compassion and understanding. "Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me," she said, squeezing my hand. It must have taken incredible strength to survive that and still be able to trust anyone again. With Sarah's support, I adopted Bailey, a rescue dog who had also been abandoned. Our apartment became a home filled with laughter and unconditional love. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that happiness was not just a temporary state, but could be a foundation for my future. After 7 years of silence, the email from my sister Amanda appeared in my inbox during an important presentation at work. The subject line alone sent a jolt through my system. Jessica confessed. We were wrong. I excused myself from the meeting, hands trembling as I opened the message. The email was brief but earth-shattering. Jessica had apparently experienced a religious conversion, and as part of her atonement had confessed to fabricating the entire accusation against me. She had provided a sworn statement to clear my name completely, though the damage had long been done. Amanda wrote that she, my parents, and even Elise wanted to reconnect. They had been wrong, she admitted, and wanted to make amends. That night, I could not sleep. Sarah held me as I processed 7 years of emotions that I had carefully packed away. Whatever you decide to do, I am here, she promised. You do not owe them forgiveness or reconciliation. This is about what brings you peace. The next morning, more messages arrived. A voicemail from my mother, her voice breaking as she begged for forgiveness. An email from my father, formal and stiff, acknowledging the unfortunate misunderstanding, without actually accepting responsibility for his lack of faith in me. A Facebook friend request from Elise, with no accompanying message. It was as though a dam had broken, and suddenly the family that had shut me out was desperate to flood back into my life. Through careful online searches, I discovered they had been keeping tabs on me all along. My father had connected with James on LinkedIn months ago. My mother had followed Sarah's public teaching blog. Elise had joined the same photography forums where I occasionally posted my work. They had watched my life rebuild from afar, yet made no attempt to reach out until Jessica's confession forced their hand. Their messages carried an unspoken expectation that now that my name was cleared, we could simply resume our relationship as though the abandonment had never happened. As though 7 years of birthdays, holidays, and life milestones could be erased with a simple, "We were wrong." My therapy sessions focused heavily on what forgiveness might look like in this situation. Dr.U, Bisenstion.U, Lillian helped me understand that forgiveness did not mean pretending the hurt never happened. It did not mean allowing people back into my life without accountability. It meant releasing the anger for my own sake, not for theirs. Sarah and James both worried that reconnecting with my family would reopen wounds that had taken years to heal. You have built something beautiful here, Sarah reminded me. Do not let them disrupt your peace, unless they are truly ready to acknowledge the depth of their betrayal. I spent weeks writing letters I never sent, pouring out 7 years of pain, anger, and loss. I wrote about holidays spent alone, about the emptiness of achieving milestones with no family, to share them about the fundamental shattering of trust that occurs when the people who should believe in you most choose not to. The process was agonizing, but necessary. Finally, I responded to Amanda with a simple message: I was willing to talk, but reconciliation would require acknowledgement, apology, and effort on their part. I was not the same person they had abandoned 7 years ago. I was stronger, more discerning about who I allowed into my life, and unwilling to accept conditional love. The first video call was awkward and emotional. My parents had aged dramatically, guilt etching deep lines in their faces. My father struggled to maintain eye contact. My mother cried through most of the conversation. Amanda was genuinely remorseful, acknowledging that she should have questioned Jessica's story more thoroughly, should have stood by me until the facts were clear. Elise, however, remained defensive, suggesting that I should understand why they believed Jessica, that anyone would have done the same. When my mother begged to visit Seattle, I set clear conditions: we would need to acknowledge the wrong that was done, not just by Jessica, but by them. We would need to attend therapy together to rebuild trust. And most importantly, they needed to understand that forgiveness, if it came, would be on my timeline, not theirs. In the months that followed, Amanda put in the work. She attended virtual therapy sessions with me, listened without defensiveness when I expressed my hurt, and accepted that our relationship would never be the same, but could perhaps be something new and authentic. She was the first family member I invited to Seattle, introducing her to Sarah and the life I had built. My parents made partial efforts. They acknowledged they should have believed me, but still struggled to take full responsibility, often reverting to, "But we were so shocked," and anyone would have doubted in that situation. I maintained limited contact with them, holiday calls and occasional emails, protecting my boundaries while leaving the door cracked open for a more genuine connection if they ever truly understood the depth of their betrayal. Elise and I never fully reconciled. Her inability to admit she was wrong created an insurmountable barrier. I accepted that some relationships cannot be salvaged, no matter how much shared history exists. Blood relation alone is not enough to mandate forgiveness. 7 years after being abandoned by those who should have stood by me, I found peace not in perfect reconciliation, but in standing firmly in my truth. I learned that family can be both those we are born to and those we choose, that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves rather than others, and that sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives lead to the most authentic versions of ourselves. Today, as I prepare to propose to Sarah, I am grateful for the journey that brought me here. The false accusation and abandonment nearly destroyed me. But through that destruction, I discovered my own resilience. I built a life filled with genuine love, trust, and connection, things I might have taken for granted if my path had been easier. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply betrayed your trust? How did you handle reconnecting with family or friends who abandoned you during your darkest times? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support others who might be going through similar struggles. Share this video with someone who needs to know they can survive abandonment and build something beautiful on the other side. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the family we are born into.